the late President Ronald Reagan's 100th birthday, and big centennial commemorations are planned for the 40th president, known as the Great Communicator.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit for political purposes my opponent's youth and inexperience.
Ari Fleischer served as White House press secretary under President George W. Bush 8 years in the 80s, and this man's legacy influences politics in all corners, Democrats, Republicans. When you had John McCain comparing Sarah Palin to Ronald Reagan back in November of last year, saying, hey, the visibility that Sarah has, I remember a guy named Ronald Reagan who had some similar visibility. How much does he influence people's desire to be linked with him?
Immensely. Even among people who were too young to even have been alive when he was the president. You see this in a young generation of Republicans. The fact is, Ronald Reagan was so inspiring because he was so principled, and he brought friendliness to conservatism at a time in America where it really wasn't associated with conservatism, that sunny, patriotic optimism. He inspired me.
You know, the interesting thing is you have people, there's even a term now called a Ronald Reagan Democrat. You've got Ronald Reagan Republicans. But his approval rating was not that much higher than anybody else's. The average for post-war presidents, about 55%. His was a point higher than that. Are you surprised that given what was moderate popularity has transcended into such long-term political influence?
Well, that's not surprising if you look at the sweep of history. That typically does happen to presidents, either up or down. I think the reason it went up for Ronald Reagan was because events have indicated him, particularly the collapse of the Berlin Wall, which led to freedom for hundreds of millions. Remember, he was a Cold Warrior. He was a hawk. He was tough with Gorbachev. He refused to give up a missile defense system when everybody was saying, give it up, you can cut an agreement. He said, no, I won't. He stood by his principles, and he really, more than anybody, is what led to the fall of communism. And
in fact, Ari, his highest approval ratings were awarded on the basis of his foreign policy dealings. If we look at our current president, President Reagan had a massive foreign policy headache with the Cold War. Our president is dealing with a lot of headaches globally. North Korea, Iran, Afghanistan, Iraq, and now, of course, the pressing issue being Egypt. How important is it to be a great communicator when it comes to foreign policy?
Well, it helps with everything you do as president, because the American people judge their presidents on a tangled mix of basically 2 things. 1, policy, and 2, personal attributes. And the great ones have both. They were right on policy, events vindicate their position on policy, but they also have this attraction that the American people say, I trust that leader, I believe in that leader, I'll follow that leader. That's what Ronald Reagan had.
And how delicate is the dance right now that President Obama and his administration are doing when it comes to answering reporters' questions about Mubarak, about how long time he has, and making sure that the backroom dealings, the behind-the-scenes pressure is where they want it to be?
Well, it's always a delicate dance, and Reagan showed how to dance it well. Obama's being tested by this now, and frankly, I've got to say, he's handled it well so far. I think slow but steady has got to be what we do in Egypt. Slowly say goodbye to Mubarak and steadily push for reform. If you push too fast, as much chaos as we're seeing now, the vacuum will be frighteningly worse.
Well, it sounds like you need to give that message too, and we can pull up that live shot right now. You've got some 100,000 people still outside in Tahrir Square who are saying today is departure day. We're not leaving until Mubarak leaves. Ari Fleischer, thanks so much for joining me today. I appreciate your time.